You never want to miss a waiver wire Monday in the fantasy game, and that's why you're tapped in to your source for fantasy hockey. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and we're breaking down all of the top ads for the week to take your team to success. Let's tap in.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back inside the lab. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen every single day. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, happy St. Patty's Recovery Day to all y'all listening on Monday. Look, the weekends are busy, and I don't know about you, Steele, but I watched a lot of hockey this weekend along with a lot of golf. Great golf action this weekend. Excited for the season as well. I know you are. But these bits of news, example, Mitch Marner, we thought it was one thing. Now it's looking more serious. Gabe Vilardi, Teuvo Teravainen. We're going to take a look at all of the injury updates because we know it's critical, right in the same vein as Waiver-Wire Monday. Steele and I have our favorite targets of the week. Monday, 2-game betting breakdown. It's Monday, baby. Fantasy GMs are working, and that's why we're here to break it all down. Steele, where are you looking at Vilardi, Marner, Teravainen? We're going to keep that segment short and save our bullets for the waiver wire.
Yeah, let's start with Gabriel Vilardi of the Winnipeg Jets, rostered at 28%, out indefinitely with an enlarged spleen right now. And when he's been in the lineup, he's been very solid for the Jets. 30 points in 38 games, 16 goals on 93 shots. He's got a 17.2 shooting percentage, which has been very good for him and the Winnipeg Jets to create some of that offense for them. He's capable of scoring 30 goals in this league, and that just creates another offensive weapon for the Winnipeg Jets, something that they've been looking for some time, not just throwing it on the back of Kyle Connor on a nightly basis. But like the problem, like so many players that factor into players that we talk about, is the inability for Vilardi to stay healthy for the entirety of the regular season. He's missed 120 games over the last 3 years because he cannot stay healthy. Every other game seems to be popping up with this player right now. I would be very hesitant on drafting him too early next year. I know this was a guy that for the most part he was probably picked up off the waiver wire, but again, when he's healthy, he showcases that he can get production done in the offensive zone. And just to wrap up this point with him and with the Winnipeg Jets, with all of that being said, I think the Winnipeg Jets will be fine without him. They've gone 16-9-3 without Vilardi in the lineup. Obviously, they want that weapon in there when he can be, but they're completely fine without Gabriel Vilardi because they've got a great offensive group, top to bottom, all 4 lines. The defense is rolling right now, and they've got Connor Hellebuyck, the best goaltender in the league. So this Winnipeg Jets team without Vilardi is still very lethal.
It's interesting how things work in this NHL, Steele, because I think last year at this time, you and I said this about the Winnipeg Jets. Hard to put our finger on what was going on in Winnipeg, right? After the Paul Maurice situation, maybe that was, a little bit before that, but you know what I'm saying. It was hard to predict what the future was going to hold for Winnipeg. And I remember actually you and I having that conversation, predicting how these divisions were going to shake out. And I think that was one of those teams that, again, we were uncertain on, and you and I saw different angles. And I think you highlighted the best point is their depth. I'm uncertain if this, obviously Vilardi out is something that is going to impact the club, but is it going to impact their ability to take that division? And that's what I'm looking at right now, Steele. I know a lot of these races are still tight, but looking at that Central, that's shaping up to be the tightest one in terms of who is going to take top spot. So I'm very intrigued to see how the Winnipeg Jets respond. Although something tells me, much like you were saying, they're going to be just fine, anchored by their forward depth that they already have. And Connor Hellebuyck is the Vezina winner. And if you look at FanDuel, you and I talked about odds and awards last week. This one is one of the only ones that I think is for sure locked away. And that's because he is just that. The best fantasy goalie for sure. And this year proving that he is the best goalie on the ice. And let's maybe move quickly, Steele, because we want to get through these injury updates before we get to waiver wire and big time bets. Looking at some of these situations around the league, and Carolina just came into Toronto. Teuvo Teravainen, Teuvo, you know me with these names. He is one of those pieces for Carolina, though, that they have relied on in terms of offense. And we were starting to really like what they were doing at the deadline in terms of bolstering that offense.
Yeah.
And now this is a little bit of a hit. So 2 takes. 1, fantasy-wise, obviously, it's sounding like he's going to miss a few games. And this is just important for a Carolina Hurricanes team that I think is still very much in line to make a run at that Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it is. From what I've been seeing online as well, I think he should be back by the start of next week or, midweek, Wednesday or Thursday's game for the Carolina Hurricanes. But he has been very solid this year, 47 points in 66 games. He's been great of late too, 11 points in his last 9. So it's very tough to see this player go down right now when he's playing probably the best hockey all season for him. But with that being said, he's missed the last 2 games. Don Waddell and Rod Brindamore have to be very thrilled with the production of newly acquired Jake Guentzel and Evgeny Kuznetsov. 3 assists in 3 games for Guentzel, 9 shots, 3 blocks, 6 hits.
Getting them 2 wins as well.
2 wins as well, and then 2 points in 5 games for Evgeny Kuznetsov. You love to see him getting excited and very passionate about the game once again. 13 shots, 8 hits. He's been into it. They're 4-1-0 in their last 5 games. Big wins against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. So even with Teravainen out of the lineup right now, and he's is set to be back sooner than later.
Great
you got to love it from Jake Guentzel and Kuznetsov.
And just a lot of good energy cooking in Carolina at a very opportune time of year. Freddie coming back, making big additions, reclamation projects, and good stories for guys like Kuznetsov, a veteran in the NHL who, look, we have the outside looking in position on Kuznetsov. Something tells me he's one of those guys, Steele. You and I talk a little bit about remembering what it's like to be on the ice or be on the bench and play with the boys. Kuzi looks like one of those guys that he's just an absolute animal that fires you up when you see him do well. It makes you want to do well. And look at these Carolina Hurricanes go. Another big come from behind victory as well. That's how you can really steamroll into the playoffs and maybe do what they haven't been able to do and get over that hump and punch a ticket to the Stanley Cup final. We're going to punch the ticket to the rest of today's episode in a hot minute and talk about our top waiver wire ads and our big time bets. But very quickly, when there's fantasy value and impact of a player like Mitch Marner, who started out, it said 1 game. The team said 1 game, maybe 2. Now it's 3. Now, let me hit you with this quote from Sheldon Keefe because we just need to provide an update for fantasy GMs out there who are going to have to juggle a line. It's looking like you're without Mitch Marner for another week. Quote, I would say it's more than just he goes, more than just a bit at this point. He's not going to skate until this week. Give him a couple more days off and we'll start to ramp it back up next week, unquote. I butchered most of that, but the point remains. He's not playing in game action till at least the end of next weekend. So I'm saying Mitch Marner, for me, if I have him, I'm not wasting a roster spot on him this week. If you're a week-to-week lock, he's going to be on the bench, and you're going to have to get creative here, Steele, but we'll help you with that right after the break.
Yeah, and that's what I assumed when the news first came out, when we talked about it a few
episodes ago. You called that, actually, yeah.
I just figured at this point it looked very awkward. Right when right when it happened, everyone was saying how he was lingering on that leg as well, and he was not putting as much weight on it. I figured they'd probably keep him out for at least a week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks, just to again, be very precautious about how they use him moving forward. Again, going into the playoffs against whether it's Florida or Boston, most likely Boston. But
Boston,
you need to make sure he's fully healthy. So I know these points still matter. You're still trying to get home ice advantage, but got to make sure he's healthy first.
Most definitely. And we're not going to go down that hornet's nest of madness just yet, Steele, because you and I are going to break down every single first round matchup. If you're in playoff pools, we're going to have advice. We're going to have postseason fantasy hockey advice every single day, Monday through Friday, 30 minutes. Steele and I are breaking it down. Today's episode, however, is brought to you by Robinhood Retirement. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. Get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is boosting every single dollar you transfer from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. No cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA 3% match. Offer good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. Some legal info: claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans everywhere, get excited. Mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only a few days away for the best MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. March 20th, 7 p.m. Put it in your calendars. Be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or you can also find it now on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. We appreciate all that love and support. Hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for that. We're very close, 1 week away, if not already in the Fantasy League playoffs.
Thank you,
That's why every Monday we got waiver wire targets coming at you with some waiver wire targets to help you succeed and win those playoff matchups.
Yes, sir.
Over to you, Flip. Honorable mentions and your first waiver wire target for this week.
I just get very excited at this time of year, Steele, and I think you can agree with me. We are approaching one of the best times of year for sports in general.
Yeah.
Like, we got the playoffs starting in the NHL. The NBA postseason is going to be underway. We got the MLB season. We got major golf season in full swing. We're going to have the Masters in April. As a sports fan, as a betting degenerate in general, it's a very exciting time. And when I look at the waiver wire as a fantasy GM, the excitement trickles into this as well. So I had to pare my list down because, look, some of these players that you and I have been mentioning, and like I've said before, we throw out a lot of predictions on here, and a lot of them don't hit. But when we're looking at players like UPL, Wyatt Johnston, all these names you and I have been bringing up for multiple weeks on end, and I know week to week it can be different. UPL is one of the hottest goalies in the league, and I'll start there. 43% on ESPN is an atrocity. And when I look at Fantrax 74 and 72, I don't understand it even more because he's getting shutouts. Buffalo is winning. The season's over for Buffalo, but they have their goalie of the future right now, Steele. It's not Devin Levi, and maybe this creates an interesting little situation where Devin Levi gets a fire lit under him because I'm not writing off his career, not even close. But right now, UPL is worth a look, and when I looked at the schedule, the Sabres have 4 games this week. They are on the Western swing: Kraken, Canucks, Oilers, and Flames. But I'm still liking those opportunities, especially against teams like the Kraken and the Oilers even, for good numbers for UPL. I see you shaking your head a little bit, so hit me with your take. You know, yesterday was a big day of booze for me, so rein me back in here.
Yeah, Devin Levi is not done whatsoever.
No, I didn't say that.
No, I know. It just, the way it came out was pretty funny to me. So,
my bad.
But I also don't agree with you that Buffalo's out of this yet. They're only 5 points back of the Detroit Red Wings right now. And those are 4 teams in front of them, or 3 teams in front of them: Detroit, Washington, and New York, that can go on a losing skid very easily. I agree that Buffalo's been pretty decent of late as well. UPL has been absolutely fantastic. So I'll start there with one of my waiver wire targets, a guy that we've mentioned every single Monday since the trade deadline, Bowen Byram. 52% on Yahoo, 65% on ESPN. If you're on Yahoo and he's out there, go pick him up right now. 5 points in 5 games for Buffalo, 12 shots, 12 hits, 2 blocks. He's getting 5 more minutes of average ice time than he was with the Colorado Avalanche.
So important.
So they're utilizing him exponentially right now with the
Yep.
Buffalo Sabres.
Yep.
No power
Loving
play
it.
points as of yet, but he's on the top unit. He's already played 14.2 minutes of power play time. And like you said, 4 games this week on a Western road trip. Seattle Kraken, Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers, and Calgary Flames. So definitely a tough road trip for the Buffalo Sabres, but they've been playing pretty decent, and UPL's been, very high confidence right now.
Most definitely. Speaking of confidence growing, watch out for the Tampa Bay Lightning. 3 wins in a row, 2 very sneaky additions at the deadline. And just like many other teams out there that you almost expect a good, astute deadline move from, the Tampa Bay Lightning must be at the top of that list. Because, look, there is a risk bringing in a player like Matt Dumba. We understand. One game he's looking like he should be a top pairing defenseman or at least a top 4. And the other night you're like, oh my goodness, what is this guy up to? But right now, and I know I'm not going to talk about Matt Dumba, but bringing in Anthony Duclair and Matt Dumba were 2 very, very good moves. And I have to say it again. I said it last week, and Anthony Duclair made me look very good. Also, full stop, Steele, he's playing with Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point. So I don't think I need to explain myself any further, but I will just in case, because also he's putting up points. 5 straight games with points, and that was before even becoming a Tampa Bay Lightning player. 2 goals, 2 assists in his 3 games with Tampa. I'm taking a very serious look at a player in Duclair who has always had all kinds of upside, all kinds of ceiling, all kinds of offensive talent, but hasn't been able to piece it together. And I'm telling you, Steele, what better way than to play on a line with those 2 players and piece it together night by night? 18% on ESPN. That's up 10% in 5 days, 40% on Fantrax, and 19 on Yahoo. They have the Sharks, Ducks, Kings, and Knights. Aside from actually all 4 of those are very good spots for that Tampa team to keep scoring goals.
Yes, it is. And that's also why I have Anthony Duclair as a waiver wire target for this upcoming week. 4 games on the schedule, 2 very easy matchups against San Jose and Anaheim, and then 2 hard matchups against Vegas and Los Angeles. And that's all I have to say to your point as well. When you're playing with Nikita Kucherov, all you have to do is put your stick on the ice and be ready for when he passes it to you. So playing top 6 minutes, he has shuffled back and forth from the second and first line, but doesn't matter. Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, doesn't matter. They're feeding you the puck, and you're going to get some point production, and he has so far in his first 3 games. My next player, though, going back to the Edmonton Oilers, a guy I've talked about maybe 2 or 3 times throughout this season so far, Warren Fogle, 7% on Yahoo, 2% on ESPN. Little shout out to a St. Andrews College alumni.
Hey,
Go Saints, baby. That's my high school. So got to give a shout out to Warren Fogle, who went there as well. But he's having his best season yet. 35 points in 65 games, 45 penalty minutes, 156 shots, 70 hits, 26 blocks. The numbers continue to go up every other year or every single year now, and this is his best year yet. Like I've said, he is a player who does get shuffled, throughout the lineup quite a bit. He can be playing in the top 6 for a week. Next week, he's playing in the bottom 6. But when he's in that top 6, he's usually producing 4 points, 11 penalty minutes, 15 shots in his last 5 games. The Edmonton Oilers also have 4 games this week. Montreal Canadiens, Buffalo Sabres, Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Ottawa Senators all at home, I believe.
Chicka chicka bow wow, Fogle. Listen, hey, shout out to your high school as well, Steele. Warren Fogle is a very interesting name, but I like that we're kind of spreading out the angles of what you can be covering as a fantasy GM. Not every, I mentioned a couple of players there, 75% owned. Most people listening, it's not going to be an option. So I appreciate you bringing up a little bit more of an under the radar name, which is I have one more to talk about right after the break. But before I get there, I'll throw 2 honorable mentions. All I got to say is Fabian Zetterlund has looked really good for the San Jose Sharks. I would consider that. And Dustin Wolf looks like it's Dustin Wolf time in Calgary, because this guy is obviously been one of those names that's been on the cusp, Steele. But Jacob Markstrom's on his way out. I don't understand what's gone on in Calgary with Jacob Markstrom. Everything else I kind of get. We don't need to break that down. But if you're Dustin Wolf and you know what's been going on, it's your time to shine, and I think that's what we're seeing here. So I would also just mention Dustin Wolf, keeper dynasty-wise, jump all over Dustin Wolf now. Add him And you might really thank me later if this Calgary team improves and he's the number 1 next year. Just had to throw that out there, Steele. Take us to break. And yes, I am ready for this ad read.
Picked him up just a couple of days ago. Back-to-back wins. Big win against the Montreal Canadiens. So he helped me out big time over the weekend in the competitive listener league. But before we get to big time bets, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's March Madness, baby. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number 1 seed, it's time to go toe-to-toe dancing on America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, whatever bet you could think of. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Flip, do you have any more waiver wire targets, or should we go straight to big time bets? 2 games on the schedule.
I have so many targets, Steele, but I had to pare them down. One other honorable mention: this Miramanov kid in Calgary is raising a little bit of my attention.
Just traded there too.
Pardon me?
Wasn't he just traded there?
That's what I'm saying. And now there's opportunity in Calgary. I just wanted to throw that name out. 10% on Fantrax. He's got 2 goals, I think, in his 2 games or first couple of games with Calgary. He's getting a lot of power play time as well. That's my last honorable mention, but a real option that I have to look at here, Steele, and tell me if you think this is way off base, but you and I spoke about Connor Hellebuyck last season about him going into the postseason, and we both said, this guy has seen a lot of rubber, and he has eaten a lot of minutes, and he looked gassed in the postseason last year, and we both said they're going to have to manage that a whole lot better. So given where they are at, right there within striking distance in that division, I know Connor Hellebuyck is still going to be a key piece here, but when you look at Laurent Brossoit, who's now put up back-to-back shutouts, and you know they're going to need to give Hellebuyck a little bit of time to get ready for the postseason. I'm not saying Laurent Brossoit is getting the run out here. They still are in a fight for a postseason position. However, they got the Devils, Islanders, Capitals, and then Rangers, of course, are a beast. But this week, 4 games, you can't help but feel at least one of those is going to be one of those opportunities for you as a fantasy GM to add Laurent Brossoit in an awesome spot and get that extra win, get some good number. If he throws out another shutout, Steele, and you're in the postseason right now, that might win you your week. So I just had to look at Laurent Brossoit, back-to-back shutouts, and we know they're going to lean on him a little bit so Hellebuyck isn't gassed again. They're not doing that one more. Laurent Brossoit, 4 games, 10% on ESPN, 33 on Yahoo. He's out there, Steele, and I'm liking his game right now.
Love that you're throwing a couple of goalie options for this upcoming week. Playoff time right around the corner as well. Let's get over to big time bets where the money is made. 2 games on the schedule. I've got a same game parlay. So if you don't mind, I'll just rattle all 3 of them off real quickly. I'm looking at the Sabres Seattle Kraken game. First of all, taking the Sabres on the money line at plus 100. I'm going a little bit of reverse trend here. The Sabres have never won against the Seattle Kraken. They've lost 5 or 6, all 6 games or all 5 games they've played against the Kraken.
But they have.
That's bound to change at some point. I like the way I love the way the Sabres have been playing. UPL has been great.
True.
The defense has been great for them. So I'm going Sabres money line, juicing at plus 100 right now. Second pick, Sabres Kraken over 5.5 in this matchup. 5 out of 5 times the over 5.5 has hit. So it's a perfect 100%. You could even go to the over 6.5 in this matchup. It's hit 4 out of 5 times between these 2 teams. And my last pick of the night, Rasmus Dahlin, anytime assist, 3 straight games with an apple. So that is going to be my lock of the night as well.
I like it, Steele. I've also, as much as when I look at the 2 games, this is a stinky board. I'm going to go Sabres money line. I'm feeling that too, just because I talked a lot about UPL. I've been reading into this team. They've been playing good hockey. My second point is I only have 2 picks, by the way. I like Dylan Cousins so much, and I know it's been an up and down season for him. 40 points in 65 games is a disappointment. Fantasy-wise, so many GMs, he would have been drafted high this year, given what he came off last year, 68 points in 81 games. And I know, look, 2 points in his last 5 games isn't exactly jumping off the page, but he is playing a lot better along with the Sabres, and you're going to get a really good value for a Dylan Cousins anytime point. If you're feeling the over as well, that's the perfect thing to parlay into that angle that Steele is talking about. So I only have 2, and my lock of the night is Dylan Cousins anytime point. He had a goal against the Islanders 2 games ago. He had an assist and 5 shots on net the game previous. I'm seeing confidence rise. Ice time is up. You know me about the ice time. That means good things are coming. If the coaches are buying in and he's starting to show, production is one thing, Steele. Fantasy guys, we're looking at that first. But if the coaches on the ice are rewarding these players with more ice time, that means they're performing and earning it. So hopefully offensive production comes. Sabres, money line, along with Dylan Cousins. Anytime point.
5 picks, all coming from the Sabres Kraken game. 2 lock of the night, also player props. Rasmus Dahlin, anytime assist, and Dylan Cousins, anytime point. Lock it in for Monday night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen. Once again, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. They're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day out there. Good luck with all your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Xander.